Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Host Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. Barbados set to receive World Bank funding. This story takes the lead in our 1008th edition of Caribbean Perspective for Wednesday, 16th December 2020. Details when we return. Welcome back. Barbados appears close to securing $200 million in concessional funding from the World Bank after 27 years of being cut off from such financing. A government official and the International Monetary Fund (IMF) confirmed that the budget support was now under consideration by the international financial institution and could be provided by the time the financial year ends next March 31st. This development emerged as the IMF concluded in its latest staff report that Barbados' ability to repay its IMF loans was adequate. Under the terms of its expanded Extended Fund Facility (EFF), Barbados is scheduled to borrow $928 million from the IMF, which also said that while short-term risks to debt sustainability had increased, this was mitigated by Barbados' strong track record under the EFF-supported program. Over in Trinidad, the police there will continue to crack down on COVID parties throughout the country. This from Police Commissioner Gary Griffith, who spoke with TV6's Elizabeth Williams. This comes on the heels of a COVID party in Tobago being busted by the police. Details from Elizabeth Williams of TV6 News.
I think the focus that we are putting is to ensure that there will not be any vast number of persons who will all congregate in one area that can cause COVID. And the main thing, obviously, is that we know the situation with private and public place.
Police Commissioner Gary Griffith told TV6 News his men will continue to enforce the public health regulations.
It is obvious that there is a degree of frustration, especially by younger persons, and what they're doing is just trying to find different avenues to beat the system. So as a bigger police service, as much as we can be flexible, we have to ensure that the law is enforced. And we will continue to ask persons to be mature, do the responsible thing.
Mr. Griffith said young people and the public at large must be aware of the risk of spreading COVID in enclosed places.
Because now you have turned it into public place because you're making it accessible to the public. And then when you do this now, obviously, the many persons who will converge in one area, they will go back to their homes. And if one person will have the virus, it can spread throughout not just other persons in that environment, but also back to when they get back at home.
Questioned as to whether he was disappointed with the instance of some people taking part in COVID parties, Mr. Griffith said the majority of citizens of this country have been doing the right thing.
It's not for me to start to give my opinion as it pertains to young persons, old persons, or anything. I think, by and large, this country has been very responsible, very mature. There will always be a few individuals who may decide to take a chance. And it even goes back to the police service. I have 8,000 police officers. The vast majority have worked tirelessly over the last year, from local government election last year, Christmas, Carnival, dealing with the COVID pandemic. And if a handful will misbehave, persons will automatically say they are disappointed in the whole Trinidad and Tobago police service. No, I think by and large you have seen the vast majority of the country have been very mature, very responsible. Persons would make mistakes. There would be some who would be irresponsible. And it is the job of the Trinidad and Tobago police service to guide, to persuade, to influence. And if all of that does not work, then to enforce.
Mr. Griffith's comments comes as one COVID party was busted by police in Tobago over the weekend, and another was ordered to shut down. Elizabeth Williams, TV6 News.
A former Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago, Anand Ram Logan, and former opposition Senator Gerald Ramdean's corruption case will join the queue of cases awaiting trial in the High Court sooner than expected. During a virtual hearing of the case before Chief Magistrate Maria Bugsby Earl Cadell on Monday, state prosecutors indicated that the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, the DPP, had decided to file the indictments against both men directly in the High Court, as opposed to having the case go through the preliminary inquiry phase first. The decision means that the case will immediately join the cause list of criminal cases awaiting trial in the High Court instead of doing so after a protracted preliminary inquiry, which could take several months to over a year to complete. Addressing the court, prosecutor Mauricia Joseph indicated that the DPP's office intended to file the indictments on February 1st. She also said all but 2 witness statements in the case had been sworn to. Senior counsel Pamela Elder, who is leading Ramlogan's defense team, said her team was still awaiting the disclosure of certain documents which are required to prepare evidential objections in the case. Joseph said the process of obtaining the necessary documents was still ongoing and they would be forwarded as soon as possible. The case was adjourned to February 25th. The charge against Ramlogan and Ramdeen arose out of an investigation into almost $1 billion in legal fees paid to private legal practitioners who represented the state and state companies in legal proceedings during Ramlogan's tenure between 2010 and 2015. The lawsuits included several over corruption which allegedly occurred during former Prime Minister Patrick Manning. Ramlogan, Ramdeen, and Jamaican-born British Queen's Counsel Vincent Nelson were charged with conspiring together to receive, conceal, and transfer criminal property, namely the rewards given to Ramlogan by Nelson for being appointed to represent the state in several cases, of conspiring together to corruptly give Ramlogan a percentage of the funds, and of conspiring to make Ramlogan misbehave in public office by receiving the funds. Shortly after being charged, Nelson entered into a plea agreement with the DPP's office in exchange for his testimony against Ramlogan and Ramdeen. In March, High Court Judge Malcolm Holdip upheld the plea agreement and issued a total of $2.25 million in fines to Nelson for his role in the alleged conspiracy. Holdip fined Nelson $250,000 for allegedly conspiring with Ramlogan and Ramdeen to breach Section 3 of the Prevention of Corruption Act, which criminalizes corruption through bribery. The minimum penalty for the offense is a $500,000 fine and 10 years in prison. He was fined $2 million for allegedly conspiring with the duo to breach Section 45 of the Proceeds of Crime Act, which criminalizes the concealment of the proceeds of crime. The maximum penalty for the offense is 25 years in prison and a $25 million fine. Under Nelson's plea agreement, the conspiracy to commit misbehavior in public office charge was dropped. As part of his sentence, Holdip said that Nelson, who had been in protective custody during his visits to Trinidad and Tobago for the investigation and sentencing, was free to return to the United Kingdom while he cleared the fines under the 10-month court-approved payment plan. He was also placed on a $250,000 bond to keep the peace for 3 years.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
In other news, Antigua and Barbuda's Health Minister Sir Malwyn Joseph is optimistic ahead of the expected rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine next year. The minister reaffirms the vaccine will be voluntary for residents and expects public support once the facts are disseminated. Sir Malwyn was speaking with ABS News following the first public consultation on COVID-19 vaccines at Sandals Grand Antigua on Monday.
It is literally a shot in the arm for the global response to the pandemic. Vaccines already being rolled out in the United States and the United Kingdom. This country's health minister, Sir Malwyn Joseph, is looking forward to the voluntary rollout in Antigua and Barbuda as early as sometime in the first quarter of 2021. He was pleased with Monday's first public consultation.
I'm looking forward to the future engagement with the public, and so that by late first quarter, early second quarter of next year, when we start to roll out the vaccines, there will be wide acceptance of vaccines in Antigua and Barbados.
He says the ministry will engage with various groups in the public education initiative, including church leaders
who have a captive audience on Saturdays and Sundays. They need to get the education information so they can be confident in persuading their congregation of the safety and efficacy of vaccines.
However, some people have serious reservations about the jab, especially since they have been developed in a relatively short period of time. In addition, there are people who consider themselves anti-vaxxers, including those who say there are insidious motives by the global elite. Minister Joseph has responded to that narrative.
Refer to the experiment that was done on black people in 1948. I think what is somewhere in the south. Tuskegee experiment. I don't think those theories can be realized under these circumstances. There's too much light in the world right now.
If the response against COVID-19 could be likened to a war, the vaccines represent timely reinforcements to battle-weary soldiers, but for the developing world, those reinforcements will take weeks and even months to arrive. Minister Joseph says much vigilance will be needed until then.
Minister of Health, though, I must express some concern for what is ahead of us for the next 3-4 months. And we're going to have to really prevail upon the people of Antigua and Barbados to continue to be disciplined, to be vigilant, and to follow the protocols that have held us in fairly good stead over the last 9 months.
The Auditor General of Guyana, Deodat Sharma, on Thursday handed over his 2019 report to the Speaker of the National Assembly. This is the 16th report being presented by Sharma. HGP's Wendell Badri reports.
Sharma noted that the Audit Office has strived over the years to promote good governance, accountability and transparency in the country, and while the report is usually handed over on September 30th annually, he apologized for the late submission this year, noting several constraints faced by his team as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic.
The pandemic affecting the country and the related measures under the Public Health Ordinance, which include rotation of workers, travel restrictions, or access to Region 1, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and physical verification of projects in this region could not have been undertaken, resulting in severe limitation in the scope of these audits.
Sharma also pointed out that due to staff limitations, audits could not be effectively conducted on a number of ministries and government agencies. He submitted, however, that in spite of all the challenges faced, the team was yet able to rise to the occasion and complete the task at hand, resulting in the report. Against that backdrop, Sharma stressed on the need for the Audit Office to move away from paper trails and become digitalized.
There has never been a time throughout the entire history of our world where the need for government to move from a manual system and paper-based payment to a computerized system and electronic payment is of equivalent importance to auditors and government alike.
Sharma spoke to the commencement of audits in some areas for 2020, which are expected to conclude in 2021.
4 performance audits commenced this year. These are the review of the technical and vocational education and training activity, preparation for marine oil spill response, maternal health care services at the Georgia Public Hospital Corporation, and an assessment of the hinterland school feeding program. However, Mr. Speaker, these audits were delayed due to the effects of the pandemic.
While noting that he has served twice as a member of the Public Accounts Committee, Speaker of the National Assembly, Manzoor Nadir, stated that there seems to be a problem when it comes to completing the examination of accounts during the tenure of the Parliament.
With the work that the Audit Office has done, with the cooperation of the financial units in the different departments of government, we move every single year to more transparency and more accountability. The process has been a very long one.
The Auditor General's report will be handed over to the Clerk of the National Assembly, Sherlock Isaacs, for safekeeping until it is tabled and presented at the next sitting of the Assembly. The report will subsequently make its way to the Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly when that committee is formed. The Audit Office of Guyana scrutinizes the expenditure of public funds on behalf of Parliament. The office conducts financial audits of all publicly funded entities, including donor-funded entities, local government agencies, and trade unions in Guyana. The Office of the Auditor General is established by the Constitution of the Republic of Guyana. The Constitution also secures the independence of the office, describes its principal functions, and articulates provisions to govern the appointment of the Auditor General. Wendell Badri, HGP Nightly News.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.